Welcome back to Focus on Labrador. This is Tough Talking Thursday. And the issues we're going to be dealing with tonight, we say one, the new CPP, political letters, and Southeastern domination in government. That's a question mark. We're going to look into that. Let's start by saying, let me start with Mr. Wesley. Mr. Wesley, we see that we all know that the CPP has renewed it of Unity Party, Liberty Party, the ANC, and the ALP. That CPP disintegrated. And now we have two political parties left the CPP. Now we have the Liberty Party and the ANC coming together to form the new CPP, and they have amended the framework document. So the framework document now is like, even though it's still open to people, but it's being amended in a way that it is very clear who they, for instance, who's the standard bearer of the CPP is, who going to get the jobs when all is said and done, and all that. So I want your reaction to the new CPP and its amended framework document. And to put some icing on the cake, let me show you what the CPP document looked like. Number one, the CPP legislative candidate selection, the national executive committees of the two constituent political parties and the CPP standard bearer agreed by consensus that the legislative seat of Speaker and Senate pro tempore shall be for the Liberty Party. In the event that the vice standard bearer is selected from the LP, the position of the Senate pro tempore shall be for the ANC. The CPP legislative seat shall be distributed as follows, and also the representative or seats. So there's a lot to unpack in the CPP framework, but on a broader scope, what you make of this new CPP and this amended framework document, Mr. Wesley?
I think in order to discuss the issue of the CPP, we have to, in context, look at the history of what we call a coalition, alliance, or whatever we chose to call it. Don't forget, post 1985, the late Gabriel Bacchus Matthews had started to hold discussions regarding what became known as the Grand Coalition. The Grand Coalition was short lived, long before we got to the next elections. And of course, you can remember the devastating history that occasioned us as a people and as a country. Then in 1997, after ECOWAS sought to push down our throats the issue of a hastily arranged elections, the alliance became a thought. And we saw what Mr. Taylor did in terms of inducement, the breakup of that alliance. And as a result, Taylor won by 87%, which I have, as a student of history, described as an election that was free but not fair. What do I mean? It was free because we had a lot of competitors. It was not fair because not all of the political parties had equal access to every inch of our country as such. But be as it may, don't forget again, we had a situation where the peacekeepers were telling our parents who were limited in a way how to vote in those elections, 1997. But Taylor won anyway, and that was history. And then we move on to 2025. There was less talk of anything near some coalition alliance or convention, if you may. Uh, uh, but pretty close to 22, a little over 22 parties contested the elections, which is sort of crazy for a small country then of less than 4.5 million people. We had a runoff. After the runoff, consultation started, and then Madam Sally won those elections. We went again to elections in 2011. We saw people coming together. The story of Winston Totman forging an alliance with the Congress for Democratic Change. They lost in the first round, thinking that it would won a resounding first round, and he refused to go to the polls. But those elections were conducted anyway.
Okay.
But I'm saying he was pronounced winner. 2017 again, splinter groups of Liberians in the political thoughts came together. Either it was in the form of the LPDP, Taylor's wrecked National Patriotic Front, and then the CDC forming the now ruling Coalition for Democratic Change. Barely 90 days into the elections that brought Mr. Weah to power, owing to the inadequacy, the zest for wealth, the pursuit of loot, various actors, including politicians, came together and saw the need for a Northern alliance. And then they sort of mind framed the CPP. And I tell you, as a political commentator, there were no such thing as sincerity, honesty, or openness in what the politicians had conceived of. And then somewhere along the way, the ego of the politics of the personalities became rife and it crumbled. When the court playing in the government's hands, the opposition became an embarrassment, a disgrace, and sort of dwindled the hope of a vast majority of the people who are placed a glimmer of that hope in a few people. In the fragility of the CPP that has sort of evoked some disenchantment in the people, with a faction of Liberty Party on the one side headed by Musa Belete and another headed by Nyomli Kanga Lawrence, meeting, engaging, and sort of tanking with the ANC to form a CPP. The solution to our problem, to win or defeat a Mr. Weah, is not in any CPP, but we as a made, as politicians, they think they can deliver what in their minds could be conceived as a magic formula.
Okay.
To conclude,
Okay.
it is fragile, it won't work, it won't deliver. It is just another base for hopelessness in the politics of our country.
Mr. Coney, you heard him. What you make of the new, I call that the new or the rejuvenated CPP and its amended framework document? I know you're not a fan of the CPP. Sometimes you call it CCP just to make it look bad. Go ahead, Mr. Coney.
Dennis, look, the fact that 1 year away from elections, we're still talking about an opposition struggling to come together to build a unifying force, to build a coalition. 1 year to election, the fact that we are having this kind of discussion tells you the nature of the opposition. I know there is one word that has been overused here, which is incompetence. The opposition, they've been trying to build a coalition almost as long as the term of office of the president, since 2019. They've been building this one coalition. It keeps falling apart. When it moves forward, you think it's okay, it's not okay. Now you have one party going with half of the party to build a coalition. Then this is indicting When we talk about the failure of the intelligentsia elite, these are some of the things we point to. I mean, to come together and form a collaborative relationship for political purpose. You can't do that. But you got the audacity to accuse the president of not doing things that are monumental, things that are very much huge in terms of national development. We're not asking them to build roads. We're not asking them to build hospitals. We're not asking them to provide electricity to the people. The Liberian people are not asking them to provide water. The Liberian people are looking forward to them to just establish a relationship, a political relationship, working together. They've been doing it for as long as the term of this president. If these people can't get framework document correct, do we in our rightful mind believe that they can get the governance of the country correct in 6 years? They cannot. They don't have the capability, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the understanding, they don't have what it takes to work along with people, let alone work among themselves. So for me, this doesn't really qualify as any national discussion. Yeah, now they find it magic. So we should now what? We should give them some cookies, something they've been doing since 2019. Come on, we got some serious thing to talk here, Dennis. This is just an indictment of that whole intelligentsia elite class and their failure that continue to impact the country up to this point.
Thank you. Madam Gonglo Weah, you may know a thing or two about the CPP than any one of us. What's your take on the new CPP and its amended FA?
I think Akina started with giving historical perspective of what coalitions and collaborations have been in our country historically. And he was right on some point. But what I would like to say about this recast CPP, I think they've not learned, in my view, they've not learned from the history of the formation of collaborations in the country. When you don't learn from history, you live to make the same mistakes. Going into such agreement, it's never good to go into a collaboration or into an agreement with fixed minds and fixed positions. I think this is, in my mind, I could be wrong, but this, in my mind, is the beginning of the failure of these collaborations that have gone by the wayside over the years. If you truly, honestly want to seek the interests of the country, I know when we started, you showed something on the screen with the different, mode of selections. This is a democratic process. So you already have a fixed mind that this position belongs to this one, this position belongs to that one. In my mind, it's not as democratic as it is supposed to be. A democratic institution must be free, the people must be free to compete. But when you sit in a room and carve and divide, I don't think it's the right way to proceed. But again, those who have formed the current CPP know exactly what they want out of it. So it's a mindset. So I'm not here to fault them. Will it succeed? It probably would. Could it be, improved upon as the enlarging the membership? Maybe it might. But if I were in such a formation, my suggestion would have been a little different than that. Have it open and competitive so that the best, members of our collaboration, the best suited, the one who has the record, who has the experience, who has the support of the people can get to where you want them to get, maybe the positions. I would not divide the position before the election itself. So I think this is a little troubling when I saw that. that positions were already divided. It's almost like you partitioning, like the Berlin Wall, where bunch of Europeans, I mean the Berlin Conference, start in a room and say, okay, you take this part, you take this part, and they partition Africa among themselves. It's not democratic when you are going to a democratic process to do that. But again, like I said, the funders and the collaborators know exactly what's on their mind to do that. And so it's not my place to judge them, but I would have done it differently.
And we're going to come back to you and see what you're going to do. Let me go to Mr. Salif.
Well, the question is, what do I think about what we're hearing, what has been characterized as the CPP? I say that this is...
And Mr. Salif, before you start, I spoke with the CPP chairman, Mr. Musa Hassan Belete, and he said they made mistakes in the first CPP. It was not clear cut. That's why there was a scramble for the standard bearership. So now they want to kind of cut it plain and dry that, hey, this is who your standard bearer is. These are layout. If you agree, come and join us. If not, go eat your bread.
Still, it's problematic. This is no CPP. Other parties, other constituent CPP members, even those who withdrew, could actually sue this for Liberty Party and the ANC, basically appropriating this, intellectual property to themselves. You can say they remain in what was then the CPP. Look, anybody can form any political alliance or some type of coalition. Let's work together. Two of us, maybe it will, improve our chances. It will garner attract some support to us. But this is not, they can call it whatever they want, but it's not a CPP that we know. I just want to state that up front. However, we do more than that, I should say. We do have a bigger problem in Liberia societally, which is that we have institutions without institutionalism. This is really an institutionalism problem, or the lack thereof, right? Like Madam Gunglo was saying, if they were practicing institutionalism, you're not going to say, this personality is who will head this and who will head this. You create a system. You create a policy. You coalesce around political platforms, beliefs, and programs that you have in place. Should you win an election, how you will govern the country. If you have like minds, then you come together, you engage in negotiation and form one institution, one entity. Within that, you practice institutionalism. Democratic tenets will rule the day. But it's not the case in Liberia. And this is not, unique to this opposition bloc alone. Even within our government, that we have problem with institutionalism. The CDC and now the CDC, right? So it used to be the Congress for Democratic Change. Now it's a Coalition for Democratic Change. Within that coalition, they brought together, built an institution, but they're not practicing institutionalism themselves. You can argue that. So, Mr. Koning, this is not just the opposition, to spin it on their heads and say, these people, how many years they haven't done this? How can you entrust them with anything? They don't have the mandate to govern the country. That's why you're not asking them to build roads and so on, right? Those who have the mandate, that's why we hold their feet to the fire. But then is the biggest problem I believe we have in Liberia is that we don't engage in institutionalism. We don't even try. We coalesce around personalities and we promote people's egos. As a result, that kind of, that arrogance or the fact that it gets to their head, it clouds their judgment. They're not able to engage in institutionalism and democratic practices.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif, I know what's... So in the first CPP 1.0, right, the issue was now, we came together and then we don't have Mr. Cummins cannot be number 2, Mr. Bwaka cannot be VP for the second time. So people started pointing at the Coalition for Democratic Change and say, hey, look, see, it worked because when this group was formed, Judge Weah was the standard bearer. There was no competition about that. So this is the same model the CPP should follow. So in CPP 2.0, they say, got you, we're going to do it just that. What's your take?
Well, again, thank you very much, Dennis. It's an excellent question. So anytime you see opposition leaders, some opposition anywhere start to point to George Weah as a model, then we are in trouble. So when you start to point to CDC coalition, the coalition of the National Patriotic Party, think about that, the coalition of the Congress for Democratic Change. Anytime you start to point to them as your role model, anytime you start to point to them as your example, then we are truly in trouble. Hence, this is why we have what we have. First, I want to give a shout out to our colleague, or maybe former colleague, Wade. I know putting this kind of document together takes time. You spend sleepless night doing that. So I want to, I want to say hats off for the effort. I know also that there are a lot of pressures that come with it. So she may have been under tremendous pressure, given the circumstances, or perhaps not. I'm not here to speak for her. I mean, she can sufficiently speak for herself. Also, another thing I want to observe here is that the idea that these two parties stayed together after the original divorce from the original CPP. It's commendable. It's commendable in the sense that they've stuck together. I think Musa Hassan Beliti, the chairman of the Liberty Party, has made some concessions and some compromises. Hence, staying with Cummins, all this time to come up with what we see. That being said, I still have concerns. Here are my concerns. My concerns, one of which has already been addressed by the previous speakers, is that it seemed to be undemocratic. Not it seemed, it is undemocratic. So, for instance, if an independent like myself try to support and say, my ambition is to go as eventually to sit as a pro temp, right? My ambition is to get to that position. Then I cannot be, because now the position is already apportioned among the Liberty Party and the Alternative National Congress. This is undemocratic. Edith is correct. I mean, it's not democratic. It's troubling to our democratic process, and it should be evaluated that we're doing now. It should not be tolerated that we're doing now on the national level, on any level. That should not be tolerated. And so this is where we are. Another thing that I found a little bit of, not a little bit of concern, but a major concern for the current CPP is that there's no growth in this CPP. It's the same two parties that we saw at the beginning of the year that fractured away from the original CPP, that is now amalgamating forces to sign a new document. Well, we didn't see the PLP. We didn't see the United People's Party, whose representatives were in the room that day, were in the meeting when the document was being presented. We didn't see them sign on to the document. So they are sitting around on the fence as observers. So they can go either way. It's very nebulous. So they can go either way. So they're non-committal. So that is a concern for the reinvigorated if that CPP. So these things, when you take all of this into consideration, what does that tell us? It tells us that our democratic experience is in trouble. Ahmed talked about ideology. These guys, a lot of them have no ideology. We have a president who did not communicate his vision to the Liberian people. He had no debate. He's shown away from all of the debate. So the president has no ideology. He has no idea of what to do. And yet the Liberian people elected him. So the opposition is copying that as well. The opposition is saying, we have a president here in the executive mansion who doesn't know what to do. Who doesn't know what he's doing. And so, he got away with this. And so if he can get away with this, I think we can. So that is very dangerous for our democratic process.
Thank you. So for the second part of staying with the CPP is, okay, and Madame Gonglo was, if I were there, I would have, done XYZ. Let's see what this CPP 2.0, what can they do if they must right the wrongs and move forward to make this viable and become a viable alternative to Mr. Weah. Let me start with Madam Weah.
So, in fact, I have one question, and that question is it the holistic Liberty Party that is a part of this current CPP, or is the split Liberty Party? So anyone can answer that question.
I posed that question. I posed that question to Mr. Hassan Bility, and he said it is the one that has been recognized by the Election Commission, by NEC. So that's the CPP. So for him, there is no.
That's half of Liberty Party. Okay.
Yeah, he said there's no breakaway. So it is the Liberty Party.
Okay, got you. Thank you. But to talk about what I would have done differently, and I think I said it here. This is a democratic political process. And by that, every step of the way, every aspect of the process must represent democracy. It must represent the free will and the environment for competition. That's what democracy is. But to have predetermined positions, like I said, it was undemocratic for that to happen. So if that was in my shoes, if I was one of those making the decisions or, carving this idea of having a new CPP, what we would have done or what we would have proposed or suggested to happen would be, let's have it open. Let's invite others. Let other political parties come. Let's have a real conversation, a roundtable conversation. How do we come together, put all of our eggs in this one basket, but make sure it is so open and competitive so that we get the best result out in order to face this task that we have at hand for the 2023 election. So that's exactly what I would have suggested or proposed: an open system that people have the freedom to freely participate and compete and show their preparedness, for instance, to take on to any position as opposed to predetermining positions.
Thank you. Mr. Wesley, what will you advise CPP 2.0 as how they can move forward if you were asked?
First of all, don't forget, when the so-called United CPP have outdoored their framework document, there were flaws identified with the very issue of allocating jobs to people who were essentially members of the four constituent political parties. They went back to the drawing board to correct the wrongs. The breakaway of the CPP, now trying to stand alone, is trying to get involved in a copycat as far as the Weah Coalition for Democratic Change is concerned. Because squarely, Mr. Weah told the NPP, the LPDP, clearly, the office of president is a no-go area. We can have conversation around the vice and other relevant positions. But I carry the largest numbers, as it is a tradition within the CDC, counting on numbers, either realistic or unrealistic. And so that is the case. That is the case with the new CPP as we see it, trying to mind frame a piece of document that in a way violates democratic tenets. We don't build institutions like that.
So what should they do now, Mr. Wesley?
I remain as consistent as I was previously.
Mm-hmm.
This It's a farce. And if Liberians are serious, let's go to elections with individual political parties and let the good people of that country make a determination.
Okay, and let me just come back quickly, please.
Yeah, sure.
Make your indulgence.
Sure.
I also want to mention here, when I said when you don't learn from history, you run the risk of making the same mistakes. In my case, I participated in a 2020 election on this former CPP ticket. The very thing that is happening now was what happened.
Right.
A handful of people called themselves a committee, sat in a room and petitioned the counties among the constituent political parties. And strangely, Nimba County was given, according to the information, was awarded to ANC. Who was the ANC candidate at the time? Mr. Taiwanwe. Not to take anything away from him, but let's face it, it was my third participation, my third candidacy for the senatorial position in Nimba. I was a very successful superintendent of Nimba, have a very strong relationship with the people of Nimba, have bases, have structures that have been living and breathing for nearly 10 plus years. And you look in that case and say, look, we gave ANC Nimba, meaning that I needed to, concede and sit back. When we argue that, we had to go to a primary, which ended the way it ended because people tried to manipulate and all that and make up story. That's another story for another day. But I'm just saying that if you predetermine a political process, you run the risk of going to, chaos and conflict that will take away from what you're supposed to be achieving. Instead of running campaign as an opposition, a united opposition, you're now going to be fighting among yourselves. And that's what happened in the former CPP. And I see that being repeated here.
Right. Mr. Sharif, what I also heard from Mr. Billity is consensus is part of democracy. So if the two parties come together and agree, that's democracy. You don't always have to equate democracy to elections.
Well, they may agree now until somebody strong emerges from the other side, and then boom, okay, even though we agree on consensus, but it seems like there's competition here, so let's have primary. That would be that was the beginning of the conflict over Nimba and many other counties and constituencies for even by-elections and all that. The CPP found itself scrambling among itself, fighting among itself for seats because they have predetermined, who to occupy where. So I think that, but again, this is not, for me, it's not as significant because we're talking about two parties. So it might be a lot easier than when you have four major political parties coming together.
That's not even two parties, 1.5 parties.
Yeah. Okay, so it might not take the trend that we are describing now, because the initial CPP was a very serious institution, but they proceeded wrongly, and that was the result that came out of that process. What is not properly done is not worth doing at all. If you don't start it well, it's going to end in a chaotic way, and that's how the CPP, because it was not properly started, it was not democratically started, and so like Roman said, chakla.
So, Mr. Cherry, how do we fix this?
So you were asking a question initially there. And one of the things that two of my co-panelists have mentioned, they continue to say, half of a party. I don't want us to get lost in this idea that this is half of a party. This half of a party of which you talk about is legally recognized. So there's a reason why it's the party it is this way, because people have not in many ways respected rules and regulations. According to Mr. Ability, there were issues, and those who were kicked out of the party or suspended from the party have not been able to come up with a sufficient reason why they should stay on the party. All I keep hearing from the other side is, he's not legitimate. I'm legitimate. He doesn't do this. He has half of the party. We have the people. He has a law on his side. We have half of the party. Let's get serious. Let's make sure that if we're going to sit around and talk about doing the right thing, we can't at the same time be the ones who are also committing the wrongs that we so criticize others for committing. Yes, he does have half of the party. If if you look at what's going on, but the law is on his side. The Election Commission has agreed with them. I'm sure there have been issues where the contention of the aggrieved parties have been dismissed, right? So what is the reason why he is in this position? I think that's a whole different discussion than to say half of the party. I don't agree with
Well,
that.
if you just agree, you yourself say even though he has half of the party, but it is his half that is.
Well, I'm just borrowing from what you and Wesley said about half of the party. Okay, half of the party. How did the party get to where it's at? It got to where it's at because Mr. Ability told us, and the party that he governs now told us that there was a reason why those members of the party who are no longer part of the party or who are suspended, I don't keep all that stuff, but there is a reason. There is a reason why they are where they are, meaning suspended. So there has never been an argument to the contrary. For example,
let's just have the assumption that there are two parties.
What it was on this show.
Let's not act like
she was not.
Let's go with the assumption that we have two parties, Liberty and ANC, so that we don't get bogged down in the Liberty Party.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. So let's move ahead.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. So we can't get bogged down into half of the party. Okay, if he has half of the party, there's a reason why the party is this way. And the fact that Wesley mentioned somebody mentioned institutional building. When are we going to come around to build institutions?
So Mr. Sherry, let's move on to what are you advising the new CPP to do to fix this issue? We have 5 minutes to stay on this topic to move to the next.
Well, so first, right, we just talked about the new framework document. The framework document does not allow room for those who may want to join the framework, may want to join this coalition. I think there's a reason why you only have the same two parties who we saw at the beginning of the year. So the Liberty Party, the Alternative National Congress. There has been no growth. So you don't have the PLP didn't sign on to the document. The United People's Party, although their representatives were present at the program that day, but they never signed on to the document. So they are non-committal. So all of the things that you hear about a coalition, if you're trying to build a genuine coalition, you need more than two parties. You need a broader base. Even if there's two parties, but if the party is not broad-based, we know that Cummings, for example, is really in terms of the numbers. He's not really in the top, in the very top two, I may say, of the electorate. So I don't think he is, although he says he is, but I don't think so. So what he does need to do is to ensure that, first of all, the framework document is more open, and also the fact that, the way the campaign is going, all these different things, something that we're going to get to, all these letter writings and all these different things, America, please help us fight, the president. This is not something that, as an opposition political party, this is not something that you want to stay on. That's not the lane you want to stay into. The lane you want to stay in is that you are fighting for the Liberian people, and you're fighting for the basic rights of the Liberian people. You are fighting to put food on the table. You're fighting for education, and you're doing this in collaboration with Liberians in Liberia and the diaspora, if you will. But you're asking the United States to do for you what you can do for yourself. Right now, what we see is that the university students are the only ones out there protesting about fix the country. Where is the opposition? Where is any opposition? I don't care who it is. Where is any opposition demonstration or protest in Monrovia for the Liberian people? I don't see it.
Thank you. Mr. Salif, will you say that the CPP could have at least bring in 2 more parties, the minimum, before really coming together to do this?
Yeah, that's why I was when I talked about institutionalism earlier on. This is what I was alluding to. So, Mr. Cummings, if you're this, very well supported, well liked politician and political leader who builds consensus, who can, you show that you are larger than a life figure, person. Yes, Mr. Sherry, look, we can argue the legality of this. Some of us, we speak for rule of law, we live for rule of law. We not encouraging people who violate law, and those are allegations anyway. We're not privy with the facts and the total circumstances as to how people left their party or not. My point is, I would have strived if I were Mr. Cummings to bring in more parties, to even split the Unity Party, to even peel off the NPP or the LPDP, right? Go into disaffected parties and bases where people are not happy, and trying to really build a grand coalition so that it's so overwhelming and so impressive that your leadership will come true. Your vision will speak true. You coalesce, you bring people together. You see a party that's fragmented. I mean, the law may be on Mr. Billitt's side, and he has made a case and gone to court, and if the National Elections Commission recognizes that wing of the party, Mr. Sheriff. But the fact of the matter is, you cannot dismiss Yambli Kanga Lawrence as essentially a nobody. That's a major political stakeholder in Liberia historically with the Liberty Party. I mean, you may disagree, but it's a senator, for God's sakes, right? You have Darius Dillon on the other hand. So there are people, there are political leaders or members of that party, or historically members of that party at least, who are not supporting this so-called CPP 2.0 new CPP. And seemingly Mr. Cummings, at least publicly, not publicly, we didn't see any leadership in that direction to try to bring people together. Me and my friend who have different political parties can come together and agree to form some kind of thing and call it coalition. It's fine. Anybody can do that. But this is not really a CPP. I still maintain that. This is not really a party, a coalition that has enough horsepower to go against President Weah, an incumbent in our context, Dennis.
Mr.
Dennis, real quick, I think, Dennis, real quick. Real quick,
let's go ahead.
Right, because I mean, you're just making the same point that I made. This is not, a serious correlation. But what I'm saying also is that you mentioned institutional building. So the people who left the party or whose behavior led to them being kicked out of the party, they have not come up with any sufficient reason, or they have not, fought back to say we belong and we're going to do. All they're doing is, in fact, there were times that they're engaging in things that Mr. Billitt himself engaged in. So where are we going with all of this?
Okay, Mr. Sherry, let us not, because we understand the legal part of it. Yeah, we understand the legal part. Mr. Cooney, I don't know if I should ask you to advise the CPP. All right, I need to be fair. So go ahead.
Well, listen, before I give them my advice, really, people that have very scant record of public service, when they put themselves up for public service, it is our obligation to analyze the very little that they do in public. Mr. Cummings, again, I hold him to his words. Doing the same thing over and over and over, is insanity. You can't do the same thing and expect the same result. Here is a man that appeared on the political screen. He didn't even study the history of coalition building. He jumped to build one. And as a result, he continued to make the same mistake. CPP 1.0 was a job sharing CPP. That was what brought them into prominence. Their first goal was how to divide government job. In fact, at that time, they had restricted it to only people in the constituent parties. The uproar from the public sent them back into to the drawing board, and then they figure out something out. You look at the CPP 2.0 now by Cummings, the same job sharing. Who to be pro tem, who to be this. There is a lack of political vision. And if Mr. Cummings and others have paid attention, the point my sister Edith raised, that point has been raised on the show many times by my other sister Cole, that where do politicians get this idea from that they can form political institutions and put these prohibitive clauses in them as to who can be this, who can be that? Where do they get that idea from? Now they say they're trying to mimic the CDC. Ain't no framework document anywhere there where the CDC job we have must be standard bearer. But going to the coalition, these are discussions. There is nothing wrong with having discussions when political institutions are meeting and and they come up with discussions and say, look, based on this reality, we think this is what it should be. And people come up with understanding. But no one can bring any framework document from the CDC, the MPP to say Weah has to be. No, it was a discussion among politicians that were meeting at that time to define what would be their best political strength. That their political purpose would be served by Weah being the standard bearer and the MPP being the other party being the vice standard bearer. But even in the CPP 2.0, the whole thing is even reversed. The Liberty Party, that is the dominant party by electoral statistics, cannot concede the leadership of the CPP to the ANC, which is the seventh placer. That is not what happened in the CDC case. So you can't make that comparison. So basically, these people, my friend Sherry can say people don't listen to the show. Go raise the issue. These prohibitions that we put into these things. Political parties should come together and say, you know what? The best candidate that represents us in this constituency should run. Instead of, saying, you bring 7, I bring 14, I bring that. So if you ask for my advice, Dennis, my advice is that let it continue. Let it continue doing what they're doing. At the same time, President George Weah will be making his case to the people of Liberia on what he has done for the people of Liberia and the reason why he will be elected on the first ballot.
Thank you. That leads us to point number 2 tonight, which is political letters. There have been, the first time I came in contact with a lot of letters, was in the New Testament. I just saw 2 minute letters going around this time. The first letter was written by Mr. Cummings, an open letter to President Weah, raising 3 main issues. Number 1, the sanctions. Number 2, the law that is being worked on that will fire all the magistrates. And the third one was the utterance by Representative Solomon George saying, make me police director, people are going to disappear. So those were the 3 issues that Mr. Cummings presented. Mr. Weah came back with a letter that is maybe 3 times the length of Cummings' letter and say, where were you when I was doing XYZ? And that letter in Liberia English would say it was like throwing hints. I mean, he was kind of very strong. Say, where were you? In fact, you were part of the Ellen government. This is what you did. You are looking for attention. You want to get my attention. What you can do on the ballot box. If you want to face me, let's go and make our case to the Liberian people. And then after that, Representative Rosalind Swakoko Denny, I think District Number 4, Monserrato County, say, hey, Cummings, you have no business writing the president. It's like throwing your pearls to dogs, using a biblical analogy. And so that's wrong. So those are the 3 letters. I know you read them. Let me start with Mr. Cooney. Mr. Cooney, you read the 3 letters.
I read the 3 letters, but I'm not even going to focus on Swakoko's letter because it's the meaning coming from a legislator. I don't think it should really be accorded. She was, I mean, in lack of courage. If she says she don't want to insult, but basically the letter is insulting. If you go by her analogy, the president is a dog who nobody should give any good advice to, but at the same time, she wants to maintain clean hands, so that's fine. But I think the president's response to Mr. Cummings was on point. It was timely. Mr. Cummings is a political stakeholder in our country. And the president is basically saying, look, if you have serious things to discuss with regard to the direction of this country, my office has always been open for us to have these kind of discussions to move our country forward, to share ideas. But if you just go in the public and start writing the Mr. President in the public, then it's all politics. So since you want to play politics, let us all play politics. And the president did challenge Mr. Cummings on very serious issues. You are offended by a one-time remark from a representative about being police director and people will disappear, but you're not offended by the daily ranting of one of your executive committee members, Yeke Koluba, who threatens to go in the bush every day. You're not offended. It is the duplicity of this elite that the Liberian people see through. This is why they're not going to be elected. Every day, Yeke Koluba rant how he will form, he will go in the bush. If this doesn't work, he will go in the bush. He insults the president on a daily basis. And Mr. Cummings is very happy to be in the company of Mr. Yeke Koluba, not raising a word. And so the president called him on that. And he talking about Liberia. There are very salient point the president made against Cummings. The president talked about his role when he was not a politician, the role that he played in the Liberian civil crisis. Mr. Cummings was an established businessman. The question is, what did Mr. Liberia didn't exist to him at that time? But even besides going to Liberia, the question I've always asked, he was here in the diaspora as a prominent Liberian. What did he do for Liberians in the diaspora in terms of resettlement, in terms of getting adjusted to the American system? What public policy issue did Mr. Cummings advocate for? We have immigration issues. We have all of these issues. Where was Mr. Cummings? We have the dual citizenship issue. That Liberia, we have out-of-country voting issue. Where was Alexander Cummings? This man that loved Liberia so much that now he wants to be the messiah for this country. Where was he? The president decided to reduce term limits. We all cry about all these long-term limits. Where was Cummings in that discussion? Where was Mr. Cummings? So it was playing politics, and I think the president took him on, and I'm very, very happy that the president took him on in such a strong manner, and he can just sit back and lick his wounds.
Mr. Salif, let's look at those three letters.
Well, I mean, you got Connie on fire tonight because you're giving him a pitch. These are political letters. That's an understatement. When I read let me start with the Cummings letter. Cummings is a politician. You write an open letter. An open letter is like an editorial. It's like, you write an op-ed. You want to raise an issue or set of issues to somebody's attention, but in the public. That's why it's an open letter, right? I mean, the president took offense to that Mr. Cummings didn't really go through his office and the procedures are there, they're established. And so it sounded almost as if, in the subtext sounded that I was disrespected by the channel in which the letter was communicated in the first place. The president took issue with that. And then the president came to the contents of the letter. And then I said, somebody posted, a friend of mine who's in the government posted, I said something, I responded to his post and I said, if our society were one of those societies where this is not demeaning the society, but like you said earlier, that certain maybe we haven't reached a certain place in the society, right? That presidential letter, because President Weah's letter was more official in terms of it's an open letter of sort, but it was not really described as such, right? Addressed to Cummings, and he lays those issues. When I read through that letter, I was thinking, listen, this tells me a lot more about President Weah. This tells me a lot more about how President Weah thinks about Liberia, how his relationship to the country, his relationship to the people, his vision or the lack thereof, and things like that. Look, any Liberian citizen, and those are legitimate issues that Mr. Cummings is raising about where was Mr. Cummings, when Liberians are coming to the diaspora, refugee camp, and things like that, because that is the Liberian politics. Edith Rain, you've been a politician, you're a politician in Liberia, can tell me more. I've talked and advised politicians in Liberia. First thing they ask you, what have you done before? It's not like, listen, I'm a Liberian citizen. I have some ideas. I have vision. I want to put myself forward for public service. And therefore, I'm running for office. They ask you, you have to have done something before to run on. If you don't have that legacy, that history, you're not a serious politician. Now, I don't like to elevate that all the time. I don't, because in every society, there's some politicians who become great leaders accidentally. There's those who put themselves forward according to the circumstances and the situation, right? They didn't have to have fought in the war or to have done something in refugee camp and so on. Uh, at that time, Mr. Weah had a different status. He was this international soccer star. He was this celebrity. He was a national icon in that respect. And he has always enjoyed the wave of Liberian support for his own career, President Weah's career. So when I read the Weah letter and I said, this letter, if it were in some society, it would be analyzed to death. Historians will analyze it, legal people will analyze, policy people will analyze it, and everybody will go away with thinking more about President Weah and Liberia than that letter's relationship to Cummings' letter or response to Cummings as such. So that's the first thing I want to say about that. And then you look at it, there were legitimate points. I mean, there's rhetorical writing. You use evidence to shoot down somebody's point, and then you use evidence to overpower their point and you move on. That's what that letter did. Whoever the crafter was, really, except for a few problems, rhetorical problems, and content I have with, they did a good job of delivering, some massive blows to Mr. Cummings. But it was just a political letter. Cummings doing
what you make of Swakoko Dennis's letter?
So listen, I don't want to elevate Swakoko Dennis or Swakoko Dennis's letter. With all due respect, she's a public official, an elected official. I've watched somebody forwarded me a video, a very long clip of her talking about different issues in relation to President Weah. Some of them seem very personal, some political. So she's being a politician. My problem with when I listen and read her posts and things like that, her letter, as a politician, we really have to elevate our office to which we're elected. Okay? Listen, you have to be careful what you say, what you write, what content you produce out there, the quality of that content, and analysis in terms of impact. What impact are you trying to deliver? You may try to reduce somebody to something, but you actually harm yourself in the process. That's what I can say about that. It was immature. It wasn't analytical. I don't think it did a job. So if she has staff, she has people who write for her, people who are in her office who do research. They need to go back to the drawing board, because all the contents I've seen from her, heard from her, they don't pass the smell test for me, even at the first attempt. So with all due respect to her office, I don't want to elevate that office. I think that her letter would dissipate by the weight of its own insignificance in that respect.
Madam Gonglowe, do you agree?
Not to jump to Swakoko's letter, I think you and I had an off-record discussion today. This whole, tit for tat kind of exchanges are not things that I'm interested in at this particular time. I think the country has real serious issues going into 2023 that we need to focus on. However, since we're talking about the letter, Sheriff who just spoke did very well. And I think Kuning, of course, this is the kind of discussion Kuning will want, having watched him over the months on this show. This is a very good discussion for him. On the contrary, I think that President Weah, in my view, didn't do too well with that letter. And here's why I say that. He is the president of the country. Mr. Cummings is a candidate vying, or, an aspirant vying for the position that he occupies. you know that people are going to come at you. People are going to put, your scorecard on the board for everyone to read. And in this particular case, all of the issues that Mr. Cummings raised are issues that have been raised by every, body in the country, especially with the sanction. People have called for dismissal, even from within the CDC itself. So it was nothing new. The issue of Solomon George's statement had been played over and over and condemned. The only person who did not condemn it was the president. So for him to come out the way he came out, it's almost like when you're in grade school, right? And then people start to pick at you. They throw all the little jokes. The one that makes you angry the most is the one you will always hear, because then they know what button to push. So now we know what button to press for Mr. Weah. You do an open letter, so there are more letters going to be coming, more open letter, because it looks like he takes open letter, as such serious offense than anything else. So I think all the opposition politicians should start writing open letters in the newspapers, and want to have volumes of, maybe that will help us to understand Mr. Weah's thinking and his leadership style, because he's going to be coming with all these volumes of response. And I don't know about that, whether it's going to make him stronger or weaker. Maybe it's a Trumpist approach that you don't leave any stone unturned, even a small child come at you, fight back. But that was an unnecessary fight. He needed to act differently. I don't think, his response to Cummings, I don't think it was necessary.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Wesley, one of those responses that I heard, in my position, I hear a lot of things. There was one person who told me, say, well, I think Mr. Weah is in solidarity with Cummings, since both of them are from the Southeast. So I think he's helping Cummings with that letter. So it was intentional to really boost Cummings' morale because of that letter. What do you make of it? So I found that it was strange that someone would look at it that way. What's your take?
Let me begin first by telling our viewers that and listeners, as it were, that we follow closely Mr. Koenig, and Mr. Koenig has reflected propaganda of the mass media in its very crude sense, as it were. Like Ida rightly said, Mr. Weah is the president. He occupies the presidency, and that office comes along with so much respect. All those making noise in the marketplace politically want Mr. Weah's job. Does he get it? No. Because he doesn't get it, so he decides to become unpresidential. Three fundamental issues were raised in an op-ed, like Mr. Salif said. An op-ed is not taken to the executive mansion, the White House, or also rack in the federal capital territory, Nigeria. It's placed in the newspapers. It is about highlighting critical national issues. Mr. Weah comes on to be unpresidential by asking one of his surrogates propagandists to reply to Mr. Cummings' communication in a very talkish form, and thinks that it is the student style government kind of play activity when he's supposed to be president of the Republic of Liberia. It's unfortunate. Solomon Joe belongs to the president's party. He makes a very reckless and unacceptable statement as a lawmaker and as a member of the ruling establishment. Comically, he wants to retire his job as an elected official in our National Assembly to be appointed the head of the police. in order to do what?
To kill people.
To kill people. Is that a joke? That a president who has no history of revolutionary work in our country is hiding behind visiting some kind of refugee camp when they have thousands of people who are in Guinea, have no history, or we are showing up to identify refugees. Is that what he's supposed to be telling us? He has reduced the presidency to nothing. He has denigrated the office of the president. I don't think we should be wasting our time discussing the tautology Mr. Weah authorized his surrogate to write, because as a leader, if anybody writes such a letter, you must take a review. Appreciate in terms of the content, the letter and spirit, and ask yourself, is this presidential? Does it worth it? Why should people in the National Assembly be discussing firing magistrate, election magistrate, when we are a few months away from elections? Doesn't that claim the attention that there is something wrong with the politics of our country?
Thank you.
Can I just make one quick point?
Let Mr. Sharif come in, and then you can. Mr. Sharif.
Yes.
The three letters. Because I know you want to react to Mr. Sharif too, so let him finish, and then you can come in, Mr. Kony, for one. Mr. Sharif, go ahead.
Yeah. So the letter by first Alexander Cummins. The problem I have with Mr. Cummins is that he's leaning, he's asking the United States to do for him what he should have been doing all along. So on this show, on this platform, what we've said, we've asked about the whereabouts of the opposition. Where is the opposition in all of this? So there was a time, Dennis, we had a program on this show, Talking Thursday, that the Solicitor General name was dropped in a racialistic discussion, and there was nothing done by this incompetent president of the Republic of Liberia, George Weah. There was nothing done by the opposition. There was nothing that the opposition did. So this opposition has waited, and now the United States does something, and they come up and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, more is coming." Like, what are you doing? You are supposed to be the opposition. You are supposed to be the government in waiting, and you're waiting for an opportunity from the United States. That is very opportunistic, and this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. What difference are you making now? What are you showing the Liberian people at the government in waiting that you're going to be doing? I see the students of the University of Liberia are protesting for the Fix the Country campaign. This is something that opposition should have been doing a long time ago. In fact, where are they? So that's the problem I have with Mr. Cummins' letter. Regarding George Weah, I mentioned this yesterday. George Weah should have asked Mr. Cummins as well. Mr. Cummins, where do you stand on tenure of the presidency and the legislature? Where do you stand on some of these things? Because the frequency of elections also holding political leaders accountable. One of the ways that we can hold them accountable is the frequency of election. 9 years is too long. 6 years is too long for me. That is too long. Mr. George Weah, to his credit, has pushed some of these agenda, right? And where did the opposition stand? The opposition campaigned against it. So one of the things that George Weah actually missed is that, Mr. Cummins, please tell me where you stand. And the thing about George Weah, his liability is his inability to stand toe-to-toe with these guys, to go into a room and actually have a debate. He can't do that. And that is his biggest liability. And he should be doing that right now, because there are holes all over Mr. Cummins that George Weah can expose. So George Weah is very imperfect. You know me on this platform. Everybody knows me. All the seditionists know that I do not, for one bit, support this incompetent, corrupt, inefficient, inept administration that is insensitive to the needs of the Liberian people. You also, I think, Akina mentioned that what has the guy who made the statement, right? He still has a job. There are people who still have a job, who still have jobs today that should have been gone. These guys that are suspended now, they should have been gone like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. These are, I don't know how you can have Miguel as your brain. Anytime you have someone like that as the brain of your administration, that administration, you have to look at that administration as an incompetent administration. We've thrown incompetent around a lot, but I think we need to do it more and more because that's the only thing that can explain this administration. You know, George Weah did a lot. I mean, I'm not going to sit here like some of the colleagues to say George Weah did not do anything. He visited refugee camps. Some of the refugee camps he visited were large, some were small. He did the fact that he manifested his goodwill to look after Liberians wherever they were. He didn't come to Guinea, or maybe he didn't probably didn't go to Ivory Coast. I didn't know about that. I don't know if he went to Sierra Leone, but places that he went, people that saw him, he did those things that politicians who put us in that situation should have been doing. But he did that to his credit. So I'm not going to sit here and say George Weah did not do anything. So the fact that he brought that up, I agree with Ahmed. The fact that he brought that up is very powerful for him. That being said, this president is still incompetent. And again, my dilemma.
Mr. Wesley, Mr. Cherry, you want to comment on Swakoko Dennis's letter as well?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm not going to go into it. What do you want me to comment on that? Like the grammar? You want me to, you know, talk about the grammar? You know, all of this. Please, Dennis, let's, you know, let's spare her that. I mean, you know, as a member of the House of Representatives, this is how far we've come, and you know, and it's really a shame. You know, it's a shame that, you know, sometimes when I say, you know, hey, I'm ashamed of my country, and you know, I get all these negative comments, you know, but I do not care. I don't care.
I think you and Mr. Kuni will agree on that one. Mr. Kuni, somebody said Mr. Cummings should reply and say and invite Mr. Weah to a debate.
But Mr. Weah has already thrown the challenge that let us debate these issues with the people, with our people. You already threw that.
No, let's do it and debate it.
I want to hold that debate.
In the letter, he said, let's carry the debate to our people. He said,
The people don't debate, that individuals who want to lead do debate.
Intelligentsia elite.
There you go. He's free.
Tell us something.
Here goes your brother again.
Then, you know, the president can never win. When the president don't talk, they say the president can't talk. But what kind of president will get? He can't talk. When the president fire back, beneath the presidency. Now, I agree.
He doesn't talk.
Listen to me, Mr. Wesley. The Cummings letter here, we treat it as an op-ed. The president can also write an op-ed. The president letter is an op-ed too. If they're in the newspaper, he didn't write to Cummings personally. He put it in the paper.
The president rather is tantamount to react publication.
The president identified all the tricks. But let me tell you something. The president put out one thing. Cummings, in the environment that we're in, people, you have some politicians that are dishonest. Cummings was blaming the president for the Senate vote on election magistrate, a bill that did not originate from the president, a bill that is in the Senate that Mr. Cummings and the opposition control. So the politicians have this tendency of blaming the president for things that their own legislators.
Mr. Kone, he was asking the president to veto when that bill comes to his desk.
The bill has not even known. He said the president should veto the Senate bill. The bill has not even passed.
No, he said when it gets to your desk, veto.
No, he didn't say that. He didn't say that, Dennis. Don't go that far for him. The president was teaching him legislative practice. That this bill is not even yet. You want me to veto it? I'm a veto Senate action.
I get a Bobo senator teach somebody legislative practice.
Read Cummings' letter. He didn't say when you get to your desk, he said, Mr. President, veto the Senate bill. The Senate don't make bills in our country.
Thank you. We're going to move to our next point, which is this whole idea of Southeastern domination. Well, what I try to do before the show, because there is with the appointment or the confirmation of the new Chief Justice, people are saying, well, what we have now, we have people from Southeast Liberia, meaning River G County, Sino County, Grand Cru County, Maryland County, and Sino County. Those 5 counties, they are the people from those counties are heading all three branches of government. You have the executive headed by President Weah from the Southeast, Grand Crew. You have the legislative, the pro tem, and the speaker, both from the Southeast. And now you have the Chief Justice. As I understood, she is from, or her dad is from Maryland County, so that's the Southeast. So what I also did was to look at President Weah's cabinet, and I tried to put together a little thing to see where the cabinet come from. And this is my best guess. I may not be 100% correct. And this is what I found. I found the labor minister from River Cells, information minister, Maryland at Southeast, youth and sport from Grand Bassa, education from Bombing, internal affairs Bombing, justice Bombing, health minister Bong, defense minister Bassa, foreign minister Lofa, agriculture Monserrato, commerce Maryland at Southeast again, post and telecom Nimba, public works River Cells, finance that's Maryland or Samuel Tuer.
Andrew Sony is from Cape Mount.
Oh, Cape Mount, yeah, that's Sony. It's Cape Mount, sorry.
Yeah.
And we have the presidential affairs. I'm using Nathaniel McGill still from Bapolu, Trokonqui, this referral portfolio from Bassa, mines and energy. I don't have a guess. And gender minister Wilhelmina Piso City Ties from Southeast. I believe that's Sino County. So yeah,
maybe Grand Chile.
Grand Chile or one of those. All right. So I'm looking at this whole idea of Southeastern, and I am from Southeast. So what's going on here? Is it real? Is it perceived? Because I was talking before the show, someone said, oh no, it's something else. So let's talk about the Southeastern domination. Southeastern people heading all three branches of government. It must be clear though, the Southeastern, and I was looking at, okay, I don't hear much about any other region like Northwestern, Northern. Most of the time it's Southeast. I don't know what's responsible for that. So let's talk all about Southeastern domination. I don't want to start with Mr. Cooney. Let me start with Mr. Sharif this time.
I mean, Southeastern domination. There was a time that I believe that George Weah was consciously appointing a lot of Southeastern people. I don't, I usually don't have a problem with people picking, people from around them whom they know. My problem is, are they competent? So let's talk about competence. If they are competent, I don't know. I don't know. I probably know more than I do regarding the new Chief Justice. I don't know her well, but I do know that George Weah's surrounding reflect George Weah's, character. Most of them are very inept. They're lazy and incompetent, and so this is why we are in this trouble because his surrounding is incapable. Tiawan Gongulu mentioned this, in one of his speeches. I believe it was in Minnesota. He had a very powerful response to everything that's going on. If I said that tonight, all these CDC people, including Wilmer Coney, will come after me. And so, this is what we have. What you have is, and I will question that more than I would say the Southeast. The thing about the Southeast that a lot of people don't know, the Southeastern people are very nice people. They're very welcoming, receptive. They are very nice people. So you have a culture in the Southeast that for the most part you can't find anywhere else in Liberia. So I'm not going to criticize the George Weah because he has Southeastern. What I'm going to criticize him for is the fact that he has surrounded himself for several years now with people, including a lot of Southeasterners, who are incompetent. Like, what are they doing? Why have nothing done?
Before you end, those are people that he appointed. What's about in the House, in the Senate, and also on the Supreme Court bench?
What about people?
Right, did he put them there? Those people in the House were elected by their colleagues, so pro tem and also Speaker.
Right.
What did we have to do with that?
I was talking about the appointed position, the appointed individuals that he appointed, right? Most of whom from the Southeast that are not competent. And so we are in a position where we're in because George Weah surrounded himself with friends for the most part, with individuals for the most part that he's comfortable with. I mean, a lot of Liberian leaders, including Tubman Doe, have had people who they are comfortable with, and most of the time they are. So you had John G. Rancid in the Doe administration that he was very comfortable with. He was comfortable with people like Bob Ballard. These are people directly from Grand Jitty, and some of them were related to him. But the question that I used to have, and I will counter them at the time, although I didn't, support the military, but I will ask them, are these people competent? No, Bob Ballard was a very, very competent advisor to the president. So you can't say that just because this person, although there's a lot of nepotism. Accusation of nepotism goes around. It's been going around forever. It was with Tolbert, Dole, and so on and so forth. But the question we should be asking ourselves is, are these people competent?
Let me go to Mr. Wesley. Mr. Wesley also is from the Southeast. So let's see what he says. Mr. Wesley, the president and the Southeastern domination, perceived, real, why is happening?
Quite frankly, I represent a more nationalistic outlook when it comes to the issue of section, segment, or where one comes from. The reason the Constitution, and of course maybe Edie can help us with the provision in the Constitution, makes it a matter of point that the appointment in the president's cabinet should reflect regional balance, or as it were, the formation of the government to reflect regional balance, is that so that all Liberians can feel a part of the national cake. Because the country is about Liberians. Yes, political parties will certainly win elections. But in the formation of the government, Liberians from all spheres who have the requisite credentials and qualification should be given an opportunity to serve their country.
Right.
The seditionists who make a fair argument to say President Shirley was head of the executive. Alice Tyler, and she came from Bombing. Alice Tyler was speaker, and he also came from Bombing. But the deputy to Alex Tyler was from Grand Bassa. At the level of the Supreme Court, we had Chief Justice Johnny Lewis, who had earlier come from Sando, deceased, replaced by, in line with the spirit of the Constitution, C.J. Kokwa. This time it didn't happen. And we don't know why it didn't happen this time. And the noise in the marketplace is about the newly confirmed Chief Justice. The newly confirmed Chief Justice may reflect genetically some Marylanderness, but she's a daughter of Morserado County, whether we like it or not. If you want to make an argument, then Senator DeLong shouldn't be senator in Morserado County, as it were. But he is senator for Morserado County because Oyaba DeLong is in a way detached from Grand Bassa, where he originally comes from. He has virtually lived all his life in Morserado. And Morserado is, somebody would say, everybody's place, though. But there are people born in Morserado.
So, Mr. Wesley, do you have a problem with the quote unquote Southeastern domination?
I have a problem. The country does not belong to the Southeast. The country belongs to all Liberians. And so that is why the presidency is all about leadership. The president, in making a determination as to who to appoint or who forms part of the government, has to be broad-minded, level-minded, and even-handed. Because it says the Republic of Liberia, it didn't say the Republic of Southeast.
Right.
Where you seek to cocoon the rest of the people in such a way that you are predominantly in charge of the government. The other people will be disenfranchised. And we'll go into elections. Bum County is arguing since the exit of Dr. Flomo. Not one citizen from Bum County is in the cabinet. Who's reflecting those sentiments? The ordinary people of Bum. They have a right. The government will vote for why I say we don't have a sense of inclusion, apart from Joel. Legitimate.
Thank you.
Dennis, if I would just push back a little, Dennis. Yes, I do understand that the country is not the Republic of the Southeast. I do understand that, but at the same time, we're not going to say we're not going to have someone from the Southeast have the opportunity that they have to serve their country. Again, I go back again and again. Me as a Mandingo person, I'm supposed to be on the other side, but I'm telling you now that the reason why I don't have a problem with this sort of arrangement is because we should be questioning the competence, the intellectual capability of these individuals who are appointed to these positions rather than from the Southeast. Okay, so if Muhammad Sharif or Dennis Jai is from the Southeast and Dennis Jai doesn't know how to run, and Dennis, I'm not saying that you don't know how to run the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you can't run any ministry in Liberia, but what if Dennis Jai is not capable to run the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but Dennis Jai is supposed to be our only Southeastern representative? Or you go to Lofa County, or Bumming County, you pick Ahmed Sharif because Ahmed is from Bumming, just because he's from that region. I don't think this is the way that we should form our government. The government should be formed based on competence, not where you're from, who you are, how you belong to me. I knew you from childhood and all that kind of stuff. So I don't agree with that.
Thank you. I too, I don't even know where Ahmed is from anymore.
Anyway,
that's my brother.
Hold on, let me go to Mr. Cooney. Mr. Cooney.
Why are you coming to me? You say you are not coming to me. Why are you coming to me?
No, I'm coming to you because you are from the Southeast and you don't have a problem with it, I want to believe.
Listen, I share a little with what Mohammed said. I think we should be talking about people in government based on competence. This dominance thing, I think it comes from two schools of thought. One of the sad thing that infected our country during the war years is this how do you call it, interim government thing, where people got to contribute from different factions to a government. So I think when it comes to national government, people think that the national government should be formed on the basis of these contributions from different sectors, different counties. Then that's one thing. The people that talk about the dominance, I don't that preach this regionalism. One of my arguments is that if you check deeply, they are the people that are deeply entrenched in regional politics. And then more the Southeastern dominance you're talking about, most of the time when you actually do an in-depth analysis, you end up not finding the dominance, especially when it comes to executive appointment. They had that discussion about the Doe government, and somebody did a listing of the entire Doe government, and you could not find the Southeastern dominance that people were talking about. You did a listing of Weah current government right here. I don't see, we got to look at it again, but I don't see the dominance in terms of the 5 counties you're talking about. Then, and then when they get confused in making their regional argument, they vacillate between where you were born, where your parent came from. They don't have, one standard. So, for example, they were talking about Judge Yusufo Kaba. And the judge is Southeasterner because they claim he born in Riverside. They talk about the Chief Justice that is just being confirmed. Even though she's from Monserrado County, but they claim now they're not attaching her to her ethnicity, they attach it to her place of birth. Even though they were holding Yusufo Kaba to his place of birth, they attaching the judge to her ethnicity. You see the confusing argument? Even the President Judge Weah, everybody know Weah. It is believed that Weah was born in Nima County. He's a citizen of Monserrado County. He became a senator of Monserrado County. But now when it becomes convenient, they attach him to his ethnicity. So is it ethnicity they're talking about? Is it regionalism they're talking about? You get confused. Because when you sue them, they point to where you were born. When you sue them, they point to your parents. Oh no, even though your parents, you connected to that. Where is Mr. Alexander Cummings coming from? Cummings is a Morea boy. But they say, oh, yes, he's not. So these confusing things, really, they're not. If you check the statistics sometimes don't bear them out. When it comes to elected positions, what are we supposed to do? If Southeasterners among their peers and they put themselves forward for elected position and their peers elect them, we should reject them because they are Southeasterners? I don't understand the argument. When Ellen was president, my brother, Comrade Wesley, he made mention of Ellen being president, Tyler being a speaker. But what you also forgot is that Ama Yulo, who are pro-tem, also from that region. But these are decisions their peers making. The Southeastern are not imposing themselves on the country. These are not imposition. I would have problem with imposition. But if a Southeasterner go in an elected body and put himself forward and get elected by his peers, I don't see anything wrong with that. These very people were very quiet when Ellen Johnson said he had her own belly-bone children dominated in the government. They didn't have no problem with that. Four children from her own belly.
That's not true.
Okay. Ellen Johnson said he had 4 children. One was a foster. 4, they were in government. They didn't have a problem with the president of the country having 4 of her children in government, in that level government. But they got problem with regionalism. They got problem with that. What's wrong with the selling government dominance of the government at that time? Why should the president get 4 of her children in government? That the only place they have to work. So I don't see it. I think it's a perception, but I'm open to see the evidence.
Right.
But I don't see
Mr. Kuni, the evidence is the executive headed by Southeasterner, the judiciary headed by Southeasterner, and the legislative Southeasterner. And then when we look at the list that I put up, we have Information, Maryland. We have Commerce, Maryland. We have Finance Minister Southeast out of Maryland, or one of those areas. And we have also Gender Southeast. That's what they're talking about.
so
Dennis,
Dennis, let me make a point here.
out of 19, is that dominant?
Let's have a word in here because you guys, you can see the Southeastern dominance even on this final.
Exactly.
Right, and it's important you mentioned that I've been accused of Southeastern.
Yeah, you've been allowing all you Southeasterners to talk. Look, Dennis, I do have a problem with it. And this is backed by research. It's in the literature. I mean, if you look in sociology literature, if you look in psychology literature, if you look at political science, African politics. Now, we're engaging in minimalism, Mr. Sheriff, Mr. Kuni, when you say, when you're competent, we're looking for competence. Of course, Ahmed Salif, I'm a proponent of competence. That is to suggest that Cape Town, this other county, these other don't have competent Liberians. There are competent, educated Liberians everywhere in all counties. In African politics, it's regional politics. You can be a Monserrado citizen culturally, because you were born in Monserrado, you grew up in Monserrado, your ethnic pedigree may have an enclave in Monserrado, but just like we in the diaspora, we have 1 foot here, 1 foot back in Liberia. People in Monrovia, they have relatives in the hinterland. They go home and they connect through language, through tribes and region. And that's how our politics works. Our people go to their people. People vote their own kind. They vote because somebody's from their region. Why? Because if you are in government, when it comes time to advocate for development, to advocate for the sharing of the national pile, even if somebody has been living in Monrovia their whole life, they will advocate for their traditional homeland where they come from. I mentioned sociology. I can cite a specific research now. You can look it up. They say when you walk in a restaurant or you are in a university campus, you walk in a cafeteria, people look around for a few first seconds to look for people who look like themselves. They join those tables, right? You look first if it's a male, because you are male, a person is the race and things like that. You join that table. You begin to congregate that way. Why the people who are elected in the House of Representatives and the Senate, the president may not have appointed them. However, because the president is in the executive mansion and we have such a dominant or domineering presidency, of course, their kinspeople, their peers will elect them. Why? Because they have access. People, they can hang out with the people, they can mingle with the people, and so the peers will see that subconsciously they're going to elect them, thinking that these people then will create access to the presidency, to the center of powers for us. That's the reflection we're seeing. That's a direct exemplification of that. You're saying, it's a sort of a psychological, sociological thing the research shows. But for African politics, it's very, very important. And there's a reason why it's in the Constitution that you should strive for regional balance. Because when you sit around the table, you start making policy option decisions. I'm going to advocate for Western Liberia and say, you know what? We don't have the Swine Mecca Bupulu Road has never been paved forever. Road going to Tottenham, Grand Kipa is closer to Monrovia, but it's underdeveloped. I'm going to make that argument. It doesn't mean I don't care for the rest of Liberia, but if I see a lot of development concentrated, the so-called economic corridor they talk about is not in Western Liberia. President Salif was president. I was working for a donor agency. They always talk about the economic corridor. They will count those countries, those countries from the north, from central and north, southwest, and southeast, and talk about. So that's a concentration of economic development. Is a concentration of agricultural development. And so when you talk about just competence as the only factor you look for, I think that when we do that, we're engaging. We're overlooking a lot of important other factors that impact how a country like Liberia ought to be governed. As a wise president, a visionary president, one who wants to unite the country, to see the national cake is evenly spread as best as possible, you look to balance. Of course, you still
thank you, Mr.
educated
from this.
Hold on, time is fast spent. I want to go to Edith quickly. Yeah, I want to go to Edith.
Please, I will forget.
Hold on,
There's one woman on this thing.
Hold on, Mohammed. Let me go to Edith. I save up for last on this issue.
Okay, thank you so much. I think all of you have said something that is significant, and I'd like to refer to what Ahmed just said last. There's a reason why the framework of our Constitution even put in the Constitution, regional balance. And somewhere in the Constitution, I was trying to look for it, but I couldn't find it. I'm sure it's somewhere in the Constitution that speaks about every president or every government of the country must strive as much as possible to ensure that all of the counties, each county is represented on the cabinet. The framers of our Constitution were not stupid to have put that in there. When there is a semblance or a feeling of exclusion of any type, you are bound for trouble.
Yeah.
Because when people feel excluded, they're going to revolt. Whether it is perceived or it is actual, you should do everything in your power as a leader of a country to erase any such perception. Behind every perception, there's reality. It may not be 100%, but you should strive to ensure that there's no such perception. Why are people having this perception? We talk about the 3 branches of government that should coordinate for the development of the country that is squarely headed by one region. Do you think the other regions feel good about that? It generates anger, it generates envy, and it generates a sense of exclusion and marginalization. And it's not good for our country. That's the point I try to make here. You talk about competence, and I like the way Ahmed spoke to that. Have you searched the other counties and you didn't find somebody competent? You didn't. So to say that a concentration of Southeasterners in one government or any region for that matter, not just Southeasterners, in this case, Southeasterners, but let's assume any government comes to power and then you bring people from your region and leave the others. That whole argument of competence does not really hold in this case, because every county, at least at this point, every county, almost, in fact, every town in Liberia or every village in Liberia, we have one college graduate, at least at the barest minimum. Our country has evolved. So that's a lame excuse. Look at the judiciary. Somebody is talking about why they appointed somebody from Southeast. But what other option is there? The 4 sitting justices are all from the Southeast. The 4 sitting justices, think about it. This is the highest legal institution that we have in our country. This is the institution that interprets our law. And then you have it occupy, what's his name, Namwe from Southeast, Jim Seto from Southeast, Justice Kaba from Southeast, Siana Yo, Southeast. Come on, guys. Let's face it. It doesn't make us look good. It spells problem. It spells problem. Then you have, and somebody say, oh, well, the legislature, the speaker and the deputy speaker and the Senate pro tem, their colleagues elected them. But you know, and I know, that we live in a system and a society where the president has imperial power. The president influences decision in each of the branches of government that we have. The president influences decision in the Supreme Court, in the judiciary. You know that, and I know that. Some of us are victims of presidential overreach. The president influences what happens in the legislature. In fact, this going election for the deputy speaker, we were told that one of the lawmakers that wanted to vie was called by the executive mansion. This is who I wanted. And so he withdrew because of the presidential power. So these people are there because the president endorsed it. You cannot assume that their colleagues elected them. It is not good for our country. It may look good for you now, but flip that chapter tomorrow. Do not always the rule of thumb. What you do not like for people to do to you, don't do it to others. We want this country, you and I believe that each of us on this panel tonight want a Liberia that everyone feels comfortable, everyone feels a part of, and everyone feels respected and acknowledged and validated. That's not happening in this regime, and it's bad, it's sad. It's not about competence, it's a conscious decision, and I think it's not good for our country.
Thank you. We will go to our Tabata session right after this short break.
Our country, sweet Mandela, our country, that God gave all this country. Fellow Liberian, that God gave all this country. We are calling on everyone here to come and pray for this country. Liberia, God gave all this country.
You can't argue that. God gave us this country, and we are one people. We are all Liberians, and we are not all Southeasterners, Mr. Kumis. So let's every week we have some Tabata going on in the country. Tabata is a southeastern word meaning nonsense, foolishness, complete Tabata. So let's start with Mr. Wesley. What's your Tabata of the week?
It is becoming increasingly comical that the government has become a government of speaking in context. Vice President Joel Howard Taylor had gone to her base in Baum County, and then she told the good people of Baum that with or without their support, President Weah will win the 2023 elections. It saddens me that at the level of Vice President Taylor, whose preference was conditioned by critical bomb votes, will go back to her people to say such a thing. Of course, Vice President Taylor is known for controversial statements, as it were, but then again, they've come up with a new vocabulary or phrase speaking in context. How contextual they are with such politically untenable statements remains another thing. But honestly, going to your own base, and understanding the vote richness of such a base to squarely tell the people in their faces that your votes don't really matter. With or without you, President Weah will win the 2023 election. That was my Tabata for the week.
Mr. Sharif.
Dennis, if you will indulge me, and I'll make it real quick. So this whole Southeastern argument, it doesn't hold in this sense, right? So I when I was in elementary school, I learned my geography, and I understand that Grand Bassa County is not in the Southeast. Grand Bassa County is South Central. How can we not understand that? So we are lumping Grand Bassa now with the Southeast. That's our new geography. I mean, come on, let's get serious. And so, but it's interesting. Edith was a superintendent. The reason why I don't like to go to these, tribal and sort of regional arguments. Edith was superintendent. So Edith, what was your composition of your office? There are Mandingos in Nimba County. Were Mandingos working in your office? I could have said your office composition should have included Mandingos, right? So let's not. I know you staff your office.
Yes, I have Mr. Moha Krumah working in my office. So your answer is yes.
So you have one Mandingo. All right. So let's move on.
So what's your
Answer your question.
So my Tabata of the week, right, is Benjamin Jonah arguing about the term militancy. So in the midst of decadence, in the midst of incompetence, so Benjamin Jonah took on the young Jusu Kamara, I guess that's his name, the student political leader, the Secretary General of the Student Unification Party. And Benjamin Jonah sat there, and this young man internet is cutting in and out. And all Benjamin Jonah could do is smirk. Instead of having some sympathy for this young man, he's smirking because, and the kind of incompetence that I saw Benjamin Jonah defending is the reason why that internet was going in and out. If this is a good government response to the needs of the Liberian people, we will have a better internet system, and Jusu Kamara would have been a full participant on the platform. And that debate was so unbalanced. So I hereby offer a challenge to Mr. Benjamin Jonah to debate me on the issue of militancy. So Benjamin Jonah debate with Jusu Kamara is the biggest Tabata of the week, and I'm offering a challenge to Mr. Benjamin Jonah to come on this platform and debate me on the issue of militancy. Don't debate someone in Monrovia whose internet is cutting in and out. The young man did his best under the circumstances.
Thank you. Mr. Salif, your Tabata of the week.
Is this whole Eugene Fagon that means supposed to vote for you hit, remix. I don't know if that they happened this week, but it's just trending. That this one incompetent. I will borrow Mr. Sheriff's word for the first time. Incompetent deputy minister, because I believe Eugene didn't know his job. Eugene didn't do his job. He didn't perform his job. He was there because he has loud mouth and he was doing the so-called nonsense cartel thing, and the seditions co-opted him and brought him to Monrovia or whatever the rest. But the thing is that he got thrown under the bus and kicked out. Now he's gone rogue. He's talking. He's blasting. He's saying, he's not going to. Apparently, somebody's asking him now to go camping on Mr. Koenig's one-round victory.
So what's your Tabata?
So that's my Tabata.
All right. So hold on. Hold your peace. For those of you who don't know what he's referring to, take a listen.
Do you have it, Dennis?
Yeah, no, it's coming, but go ahead with your conclude with your Tabata.
Yeah. So finally, it's very comical but serious, right? If you listen to what
this, I mean, you can't take it from him. This guy is eloquent, man. This guy is smooth.
This guy's an insider. He was an insider.
So they made a song of it, right?
Right. So I wanted to play that song. That means supposed to camping.
Yeah.
Mr. Koenig, what's your Tabata of the week?
Yeah.
My man, the Tabata is so plenty, sometimes you even know what to pick for, and sometimes you want to take it from the opposition and stuff. But, there was a certain time where the intelligentsia elite used to be lovers of international statistics released by the World Bank. I mean, they were running away with these numbers, growth numbers. The economy grew at this 5%, 4%, 6%. Now the IMF come out now to say that the Liberian economy grew by almost 4%. I think 3.7% is the exact number. There are people who say, I think the people temper with that number. I think they kind of micromanage it, not a real thing. Some kind of number. And, you find this, the kind of situation continue, even with the progress of the country in a WIAC. The progress the students are making in WIAC, from the massive failure of the last 12 years when they couldn't even pass the WIAC, to the incremental progress we're making. You find people saying, they changed the exam. So because of George Weah, the whole West African people had to change the exam just to accommodate George Weah. The whole IMF had to change their statistical something just to accommodate George Weah. I think that's the greatest tabata by the intelligentsia elite, whom our president now has also described as the traditional political elite.
Thank you. Madam Gonglo, what's your Tabata of the week?
So, like Kuni, I got plenty Tabata, but plenty of the CDC can always produce Tabata, plenty every week. But I will just take one.
Okay.
And this is strange to me. So Tabata is something new for me now.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But I will just follow suit. What's his name? Solomon Josh. I mean, that was the biggest Tabata in my view for this week or last week. That you sitting representative from the ruling party and publicly you say you want to take off the representative suit so you can be killing people. I mean, let's face it, that's the biggest Tabata of the week to me. That was just an unbecoming statement to say people will get lost. And you don't even cringe. And the president didn't say a word. Jeez. This is like going back in Stone Age. Thank you, Lama Tabata.
Thank you. Our viewers too have their Tabata of the week. Let's start with Elvis Morris. He said, "My Tabata of the week is Cummings' appearance on Arise TV in Nigeria. Is he campaigning to Nigerians or Liberians? How many people watch Arise TV?" Sam Wallace said, "My Tabata of the week is Ellis Cummings challenging, questioning President Weah's efforts at helping disarm child soldiers and bringing an end to Liberia's civil war as a UN goodwill ambassador. Sometimes you just have to know when to be quiet." Let's see if we have more here. My last week, my Tabata was my Senator TJ, trying to create some big Tabata just to show that he probably got bribed to confirm this guy who made a fool of himself by putting himself forward as the LAA boss. So the Senate rejecting him, want to reinforce my Tabata from, again, Mr. TJ, trying to make things up and say, well, you got 190 credits. And so since a bachelor is 120 credits, you got bachelor, regardless where these things come from. So the confirmation really reinforced my Tabata. And Mr. Kuni, I want you to, as a fellow Sanoyan, please join me. Let's call out Senator TJ for his Tabata.
Oh, no, Tabata.
Murphy Deco say, "My Tabata of the week is Gov't Weah lies about giving assistance to Liberian refugees during the Civil War." Well, yes, he did. For me, I was in Guinea from 1990 to 95. Maybe he was in Conakry, but I was in the forest region, and Mr. Weah did not come to Guinea, but I heard that he went other places. Well, I want to thank you all for tonight. I'm sorry we don't have time. We don't like to go above 2 hours. So we will conclude. I want to thank our viewers for always being here. A lot of Tabata still going on. I think we did justice to the topic tonight. And viewers' comments, please, in your spare time, please go on our page and respond to the many comments. Let's have a 30 seconds each around the room to have our closing comments. Let me start with Mr. Salif.
Yeah, I just want to thank you again for the invitation and for always looking for very highly competent co-panelists to make our discussions very interesting. So, Madam Gunglo, I've heard your name and never met you, interacted with you, so it's an honor to share the platform with you. These issues we're talking about very, very serious matters. They affect lives every day. Our people, whom we talk to, we deal with, we help, we work with. We don't come here to make light of them because they're very serious. These political letters that we've discussed, that we're going back and forth, to me, they exemplify a lot of serious issues, how our government thinks, how our government works, and our chief executive, how he thinks about the country and what his plans are for Liberia. I mean, if you can read between the subtext. So
you have 30 seconds. So
yeah. Well, you talk about my 30 seconds. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that if you would make anything that appear to be making light of something. It is serious, and I hope that we've done justice to the topic tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cooney.
Well, when it comes to Liberia, I am an internal optimist. I believe that our systems are evolving. I believe they will get better. They are improving. There are challenges within the system, but that's our system developed. So this is why I'm always never down when issues come up in our country. The short of the long is that the branches of our government are functioning. Whether they are functioning to people's expectation is another matter. But it is our responsibility as Liberians to make them to function the way they should function. We have a judiciary, we have a legislature, we have the presidency. It is our role as citizens of that country to improve our democracy. It is our role to make elected officials accountable. It's our role to elect leaders that represent our views and our aspirations. And if we do that, our democracy will improve.
Thank you. Madam Gonglowe.
So first, let me say thank you so much for having me on your show tonight. I really enjoy being on this show with all of these great men whom I've been watching for some time now, and just being here tonight, I feel honored. I like to say that there are serious issues to be discussed, and those of you who have these platforms, it's like it's a burden, it's an onus, it's on you to ensure that we provide the way for our people. We are going into election 2023. The Elections Commission, there's so many lapses that people are not flagging. I think we need to begin to x-ray the process and call out where we see problems so that it will be fixed before we have a rude awakening in 2023. Election matters, grave matters, because our country history, the war that we had, the conflicts we've had in the past, has been squarely due to electoral malpractices that produce leaders that were not to the satisfaction or the expectation of the electorate. So I think we need to begin to look at the process as they have produced they released their timetable. Thank you so much again for having me, and I enjoy my time here with all of you guys.
Thank you so much for coming. Mr. Sharif.
And next time, please have other women.
Yeah, we're trying.
Yeah, so thank you, Dennis. Thanks to co-panelists. Madam Gonglowe, I think this is your first time on Focus on Liberia. So I don't know if
she's
Dennis...
been here, but not on Tough Talking Thursday.
Okay, not on Tough Talking.
Yeah.
I thought you should have welcomed her with the bottle of water you always welcome others with.
I say that discrimination right there.
You see, that's the thing we're talking about.
It's not
You're not going to Southeast. You see, you're doing a Southeastern thing.
Huh?
No, but
You're not going to Southeast, doing Southeastern bias.
but seriously, thank you for being here. Thank you for your contribution. It's an honor to share this platform with you. So Dennis, we have a serious issue in Liberia, and I talk about the deficit of leadership all the time. We have a real deficit of leadership, and so it is time, for Liberians to rise up and make the right decision. So if we vote the right people in, then I think that there is a way forward. So sometimes there was a time that, Dennis, I told you on this platform that I have lost all hopes. And some people, were laughing, but I'm serious. Sometimes it seems that way. And I get up in the morning about Liberia. I worry about Liberia all the time. And so what will restore the hopes of someone like me and I believe thousands of others is the decision that we're going to make. So I thank you, for, this lively discussion. I just want to conclude with the fact, again, that geographically, Grand Bassa is not in the Southeast.
I even take
nobody said so, though.
I even take Riverside out. Mr. Wesley, you got the last word. You started and you ended.
Yeah, thank you. Let me again join my colleagues in welcoming and appreciating the role of the former superintendent of Nema County, for her insightful participation tonight. Uh, Folks, when the Constitution speaks to the issue of regional balance in the composition of the government, it is anchored on the basis of national security, reducing the potential of marginalization, and giving everybody a voice and creating visibility for equal participation and access. This is what we should continue to encourage this government and future government to continue to do, because it is in the interest of national unity and cohesiveness. Regarding the letters and the players, it would have been a modicum of wisdom had President Weah simply responded to the three key issues raised, rather than wasting our time to dissect, de-dissect, construct, reconstruct things that were totally unnecessary. We hope the government will learn and act presidential, because we did not elect clowns for the highest office of our country.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank our viewers for always following Focus on Liberia. To all of you, we say Niche, Balika, Imama, Apomso, Tato. On behalf of all of us, we end with our song.
Yeah, you left some arm, man.
That is, you didn't get crowned.
Cool. Well, Crown and Basso join with the post.
Oh, come on, man.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you all. Let's end with our song that says, whether you believe Southeastern dominating or not, we are all Liberians. Whether you believe Mr. Cummings' letter is in place or Mr. Weah's response is in place, we are all Liberians. What is incumbent upon all of us is to do our very best to make our country the glorious land of liberty. We are all Liberian, folks. Good night and God bless you.
We are Liberian. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Either you hate it or we want. Liberia. Either you hate it or we want. Liberia be Liberian. Oh,